Hi everyone, welcome to today's episode. Today I have special guest Ella, who you might all know as PurpleElla. Ella is an autistic adult with ADHD who is a public speaker, content creator and YouTuber. She makes fantastic videos sharing thoughts and tips on life as a proud neurodivergent adult. Ella lives with her husband, 3 children, a cat called Katsu and Coco, who is an adorable autism service dog. So Ella, do you want to say hi?
Hi, it's great to be here. Thanks for asking me to do this.
No worries. It's really nice to have you on. I have followed you for many years and it's exciting to have a nice chat with you. So let's jump right in. So I tend to start off with asking about your diagnosis. So I know you're diagnosed with autism, ADHD, and is it hEDS? Like hEDS? I don't know how you say it.
I don't know how you say it either. And I can't even say Ehlers-Danlos syndrome properly. Ehlers-Danlos. I don't know. Whenever I talk about it, I'm like, I've just said that probably completely wrong.
Okay,
so
cool.
Whatever.
Nice.
hEDS, cool. Maybe.
So do you want to maybe start with the autism diagnosis and then we can kind of talk about your ADHD and EDS as well?
Yeah, well, it actually probably makes sense to start with the dyspraxia diagnosis that I did actually get as a child.
Okay.
So as a child, my mum worked in a special needs school, predominantly with autistic children, and then she went on to work in a language unit supporting autistic children that was attached to a mainstream school. So autism's been in my life forever, I guess, because I used to go in and help. And she'd noticed that, my development wasn't typical and had taken me to see an ed psych. And so I was diagnosed with dyspraxia as quite a young child, like 6 or 7. But never really thought, I was told, but never really thought about it a huge amount. And then my eldest child, I started noticing probably when she was about 2, that maybe her development wasn't entirely typical, and then followed kind of 5 years of umming and erring. We saw a pediatrician who said, when she was 3, said, she's probably fine. And eventually she was diagnosed when she was 8. And when she was diagnosed, I had personally gone through several decades of quite significant mental health issues, which had never really completely resolved. Like, I'd learned ways of coping with the issues that I was having, but they didn't really fit into any stereotypical mental health diagnoses that I'd looked at. The meds didn't seem to work. The strategies didn't seem to work. So I'd kind of found my own way to navigate the world. And then when my daughter was diagnosed, I think I looked at the issues that I was having and kind of went, oh, this sounds like maybe this is me too. But thought I was completely, I think when you first consider that you might be autistic as an adult, there is a part of you going, am I bonkers or neurotic or overthinking this? So I kind of thought I'd test it out on some family and friends, thinking they'd all laugh me out of the room. And all but one friend kind of went, yeah, did you not realise?
Great.
Of course you're autistic. It makes total sense. I've thought it for years. Right. So that was kind of reassuring, but also like, what? Why did you not think to mention it to me? Yeah. And my husband, who I guess was the big litmus test, if you like, because he really knows me the best, kind of went, yeah, actually, I definitely think that's worth exploring. I don't think that's too far out there. Let's try and get an assessment. And I did get an assessment and I was diagnosed. Really fortunately on the NHS, without too much trouble, really. So at the time I was 36, I had still got quite young children. I hadn't really found my place in the world career-wise. So I thought, right, okay, I'm going to go on the internet and talk about this because that's something that would have been useful to me. There were already people talking about autism, obviously, but I think in the last couple of years, it has massively exploded. At the time, it was more like a handful of people talking about autism on the internet. So I started to do that, and that's been really rewarding. And skipping forward a little bit, at some point during the pandemic, my youngest daughter, who already was diagnosed as autistic, also received an ADHD diagnosis.
Okay.
So I was looking at ADHD information because she had been diagnosed with something that I hadn't really researched a huge amount. And, like every good autistic person, I needed to know everything I possibly could about this diagnosis to support it the best that I can. And when, oh my God, I've got ADHD, like really, not even maybe, like really, I tick so many of these boxes because I'd always wondered, so I'm autistic, why am I not quiet and bookish?
Right.
And yeah, so my husband then also went off and did some research and was like, oh my God, yeah, you really do have ADHD. So
okay.
Yeah, the wait list for the NHS services was really, really long, like 3 to 4 years, and we were in a pandemic, so it wasn't going to get shorter.
Wow.
So I actually went and got a private diagnosis with a service that now is doing loads of NHS work. And that was last September, so relatively new. Mm-hmm. And since then, I've been really passionate about supporting, because actually the autism ADHD combo isn't that uncommon. There are a lot of people with that dual diagnosis, and I couldn't find anyone really. I mean, there probably are creators that I haven't come across, but I couldn't find anyone really talking about having both, how they interact, how some strategies for one totally don't work for the other, and how to navigate that and find a route through that with a happy life. So since then, I've kind of been all about that. Like, hey, yes, there's all these individual labels, but some of us have got dyspraxia and autism. Some of us have got dyslexia and ADHD. Let's look at all of that. And how do we navigate the world with those individual brains? So yeah, that was a really long answer, and I'm not sure it was what you asked me.
Yeah, it was. Exactly. It's really interesting to hear how, like, you've been through the process, your children have been through the process, your husband has, like, been throughout being like, yeah, I think so. Yeah. It's really interesting to hear, like, from, like, your whole family's perspective of that. You were kind of introduced to ADHD through, one of your children's diagnosis, and it's weird what you can then see in yourself when you start to really look. And it's really interesting to hear how your process from having the dyspraxia, like, when you were little, like, really, I don't know, kind of started off the kind of chain of events in terms of, knowing stuff. And to be 36 and diagnosed with autism, that's such a, like, long time to go without knowing. I was diagnosed age 25, and that's long enough. So, for like an extra 10 years, I can't imagine, like, did you find, like, a lot of stuff has kind of fallen into place in terms of realizing, like, traits and things that you'd sort of had when you were little at all?
Oh yeah, I mean, navigating, getting married, starting a career, and having 3 children with completely no knowledge that I'm autistic. Yeah. I do look back on that, and I think, like, and I don't know whether it's okay to say this, but by God, you're pretty awesome. Like, you've managed to do all of this, which is something I could never have said pre-autism diagnosis, because I felt like a complete failure. So I will say those years before the diagnosis were a constant battle of going, what is wrong with me? And since the diagnosis, and I think particularly since getting both the autism and the ADHD diagnosis, I'm like, okay, I know what my brain is about now. And I think the last couple of years, because prior to the pandemic, I'd say my following online was significantly smaller than it is now. And there are people that have been watching me for years, and thank you if you're one of those people. I love that community that's always been there. But it meant that I got more messages, more emails, more exposure, more pressure to keep being good and keep growing and improve my production values, and just all this pressure, whilst at the same time I have a child that's at home full time because we haven't got a special school place for her yet, that I am basically homeschooling, and a husband that works full time, and 2 other children who need stuff. So I look at that and I think I've coped with that really well, and it's gone really well, and I've found a way to navigate it that I could never have done if I didn't know all of this information about my brain and how I need to care for myself. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's because people say, don't they, why would you get a diagnosis as an adult? What is there to be gained from it? And I always say, if you learn how to care for yourself accurately because you know what you need, that's just going to improve your life. And that's where I'm at now. Not 100%. I'm still working on it, but so much more than when I was just in the dark about my neurology, trying to figure out, why am I freaking out in the street, the supermarket, etc. Exactly. So, and I think it makes me a better parent to my neurodivergent children because it's not a thing, we're like, my brain's like this, your brain's like that. And so I'm glad for them that they are growing up with me having that knowledge.
Yeah, I think that's great that they have someone to look up to and someone that they know, because I think a lot of people, when they get diagnosed, they don't necessarily know anyone close who is going through the same thing. And I'm very much a believer of that. It doesn't matter what age you are, you deserve a diagnosis. It makes a difference no matter how old you are, whether you're 60 or something and find out you're autistic, like you still deserve to know. And like you say, it helps you realize so many things, and it can kind of help in terms of, I don't know, it just kind of sheds a little bit of light on why you feel different or potentially broken when actually you're not. And, like you're saying, you've done so much not knowing that you were autistic, and to raise 3 children and be married and, be juggling all this content creation stuff as well is so much to be doing for anyone, let alone someone who is autistic and, homeschooling and all that. So I think it's really interesting to hear the process behind, like, I don't know, just like your family dynamic and stuff is really interesting.
Yeah, I'm really lucky in that my family, including my husband, have always been so supportive of the work that I do, and that's definitely been a great help. There's Mr. Purple's always in the background going, so what problem are you having with this camera? What problem are you having with that? How could we get some better lights? Thank goodness, because I'm terrible at that stuff. And obviously the kids are well proud.
Oh, that's lovely. I think it's so cool that they, I don't know, just have like a mum who's also neurodivergent and, can potentially see through that lens what like they're seeing as well. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
And it's nice that you like chat about that online, and that you're open about like your children also being neurodivergent and stuff like that. Like, it's nice to, I don't know, like hear of a different family dynamic as well.
And I think it normalizes the experience that being autistic doesn't mean that you can't navigate being a parent or having a relationship. Yeah. I think there was this belief, wasn't there, in the past, that autistic people couldn't do those things. And so, yeah, it's good to be kind of like ahead of the, have kind of reached that stage, and hopefully be someone that people, maybe people your age can go, well, maybe that's something, if that's something that I want, that's something that I can have.
Yeah, exactly. And just to show that, if you find the right partner in life, and find the right kind of support network and stuff like that, like you can thrive and you can do what is potentially considered normal and things like that if you want to. So yeah, definitely. Like for me as well, having someone like you online, it's like, oh great, you can see someone who's doing well and is being like honest about your struggles as well. Because I don't know, I feel like a lot of online stuff is very like rosy and like, life is brilliant, when actually it's not. It's not all, like song and dance and stuff like that's difficult, like bits.
Yeah, it's hard to put that stuff up. It's hard. I always kind of when I'm going to put up a post that's about a struggle, like I've recently gone through experiencing burnout and having to deal with that, and I've been quite public about that. And I always sort of press the button to put it up going, have I gone too far in my oversharing? Yeah. But I really think if I was always just like, so if you do these strategies, then your life is going to be smooth and you're never going to have a meltdown. Exactly. Then that would just be a lie, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. You can't, you don't want to give off that impression when actually, it's a real mix. So yeah, I definitely get you. And when did the whole kind of EDS thing come in as well? Was that like between diagnoses, or is that something you found out like more recently?
So I would say that I've had symptoms, really minor symptoms of EDS since my early teens. I had a lot of kind of minor injuries and twisted things that now I look back and think, and I was always prone to digestive issues. And, the things, but like little niggly things that most people have, and you go to your GP and you sort it out and you get on with your life. And then at some point in my early 30s, after I'd had my third child, as she was a baby, I started to really struggle with fatigue and digestive issues and pain in a way that was disrupting my life. So I ended up with a ME diagnosis, because obviously, they ran all the tests, they didn't find anything at the usual route to an ME diagnosis. So I believe that that's what I was dealing with for about, 5 years after that. And then, because at the time I didn't know I was autistic, and so I didn't know I'd never heard of EDS. And then fast forward 5 years on from that, I'd always managed with the ME to be someone who could work during the day, but then crash out on the sofa in the evening, so kind of a mild case, I guess. It disrupted my life, but I wasn't having to give too much up to accommodate it. And then at some point, I think I was about 38, 39 maybe, I crashed really, really hard and couldn't get out of bed for about 4 months, 5 months. And I was in a wheelchair when I was out. And I remember that. And I was working. I started PurpleElla by then. I remember having to go and do a few events that I'd committed to in a wheelchair, just kind of slumped there, kind of going, let me talk to you about autism. It was kind of a hideous year, really, where my friends were like, helping me, and I wasn't able to see my kids' performances in school or take them to the park, or I was in bed just watching life happen, and it was really hard. And Mr. Purple obviously found that really hard too. At some point during that, I was already booked to speak at the Women and Girls National Autistic Society conference, and it was the second year in a row that I'd done, and it was in London. And so 2 of my friends supported me. I was in a wheelchair. I had a hideous, it was really quite hard work to be there. And I met Laura James, who wrote Odd Girl Out.
Yes, yeah.
I'd already chatted to her online, but I met her in person, and she has an EDS, I think it's hEDS she's got, but I wouldn't commit to that diagnosis. And we spoke about my symptoms, and she sort of said, you know, and I'd always been hypermobile. That's how I ended up, used to be a circus artist, for anyone that doesn't know, and that's how I ended up doing that, in part because I did have that natural flexibility. And it all just kind of made sense. So I went to the GP, and the GP was like, yeah, no, we don't diagnose that. You've got ME. As the GP, when you've got an ME diagnosis, you can go in with anything and they'll go, yeah, you've got ME. You're doing really well. Carry on. Right. So I was getting nothing from the GP. So I spoke to Laura again, and she recommended a particular doctor in London who had diagnosed her privately. So I did pay and go and have that private appointment, and was diagnosed with EDS. But actually, more recently, I actually finally saw a rheumatologist in an NHS hospital about 2 months ago. And she diagnosed me with EDS. So now I have an NHS diagnosis to add to my question, which is good, because it means when you see specialists in the NHS, they will see it on my notes and whatnot.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess, was I diagnosed? I think I was like 41 by the time I was diagnosed. So a couple of years ago now. And that's been really helpful to know, for sure.
Wow. I love how you said, like, to add to your collection.
Well, we actually, at one point, because obviously, so my youngest daughter has ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, and autism. And my middle child has EDS, and my eldest has autism. And so we were wondering if we could fill the alphabet, you know? Excellent. We've got ASD, ADHD, EDS, they all seem to be letters. Yeah. So we did try and write it out, but we were like, no, we're nowhere near having the alphabet. Conditions where would you get Z from? True.
That is very true. I love that you were trying to make a whole, like, alphabet of diagnosis. That's a lot to, like, juggle in terms of, like, appointments for yourself and your children, and, like, to keep on top of in terms of, like, school and stuff like that. Like, that's a lot going on top of, you know, just daily life and your job and stuff like that. So I can imagine there's just a lot to think about all the time, like being a mum and all this on top.
It's definitely mental. I have a very detailed organisation system. And I also have really learned recently, something I've learned really recently that I'm trying to pass on to as many autistic people as I can, is that I did not know, up until I experienced burnout recently, I did not know about prioritising to-do lists. So I'd write a to-do list and I'd be like, oh gosh, there's a lot of things to do today. That's a bit much. Not managed to do it, feel like I'd failed, and repeat. And so I was searching for, like, the perfect organizational app or system, and I looked at bullet journaling and calendar blocking, and none of those things worked for me, because none of them are really flexible enough for, I can't do anything today because my body says no. Yeah. You know? So I learned about prioritizing. So basically, I make a list and I'm allowed to prioritize 3 things on it, and those 3 things have to get done. And all the rest can go. And I'm getting to the point, I promise. And it's not so much about the system and whether the system works, as it's taught me that there are some things that you cannot do and the world won't end. Yeah. And I've had to learn that to navigate, as you say, an extremely complicated life with a huge to-do list and a lot of self-care needs for myself. I've had to learn to let things go and just be like, I did not organise the birthday present for the class teacher, and I'm okay with that, you know, or whatever it might be.
Exactly. You're one person. You can't achieve everything all the time. Like that's a lot. That's really good. Like, it's really interesting to say about like prioritizing, because, you know, it can work in any setting. Like, I don't know, like in terms of like school homework or like, you know, college or uni or stuff like that. Like, you know, really prioritizing what needs to be in for when and stuff like that. Like, that's a really good way of, you know, you don't have to complete an entire to-do list. You just get your top 3 things done. Like, I can see how that really works. Like, that's a good method. I might have to try that.
I'm going to make a whole video. I've been doing this system for about 8 months now, so I thought I'm probably secure enough in it enough now to actually go, yeah, you know, this is a really flexible way of doing things that doesn't mean you'll go insane when you didn't do your bullet journal or, you know, meet your goals or whatnot.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of autistic people are drawn to like apps and stuff like that, and like just trying to find any sort of way to like, I don't know, organize your thoughts and notes and to-do lists and stuff like that, because there is so much like running in your head all the time that actually it does make sense to try and write it down somewhere and try and, you know, have somewhere to tick it off. But yeah, it'd be really interesting to see a video about that actually.
And it involves stationery, so what's not to love?
I have an issue, I don't know, an issue with stationery. I can't not buy it.
I know, I'm obsessed. I'm a 42-year-old woman who uses stickers, because I was doing bullet journal-ish for a bit, and I liked the idea of being able to put little stickers in, and I would go on Etsy and buy all the cool, because I'm sure if you follow me, you know I love a bit of kawaii. But you have to do it in a certain way. So I now just buy stickers and just stick them in my like in my to-do list with no real reason other than they look cute.
Yes, exactly. I feel like bullet journaling is like a real commitment, and like it has to look a certain way. Whereas with your own sort of journal, you can be like, yeah, just stickers anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And you can add whatever you like. Like, I've started monitoring what my mood was like and a good thing that happened that day.
Oh, that's nice. That's a good idea.
It's just useful, because do you do this? Oh God, everything's terrible and everything has always been terrible. Yeah.
You just like, what do they call it? Like, I don't know, like disasterize everything.
Catastrophizing.
Catastrophizing, that's it.
I'm actually writing an article about catastrophizing, or I'd have lost the word too.
Yeah, like, I don't know. You just, for some reason, like your brain just focuses on the bad stuff and doesn't see the good in the world. So that's a good way of doing it, like making yourself write a good thing.
And also what your mood was, so you can look back and go, actually, I was in quite a good mood only 3 days ago. So take that, past Ella has proven you wrong.
Yeah, and to be like, it will come back soon, I'm sure. Yeah, exactly. I might feel happy again.
Yeah, I have experienced happiness. Here is evidence.
Yeah, that's a really good way of doing it, actually. I might need to do that. Yeah. I need to get on top of prioritizing and like getting my mood down. That sounds like a good idea.
But you don't have to do it. If you miss a day, that's fine.
Yes, I like that kind of flexibility of like, you don't have to like, because otherwise you feel a bit like you failed if you like miss a day or something like that. So
yeah, I actually bought because I really like Fern. Is it Fern Cotton that does the Happy Place podcast? Yes. I always get Fern Britton and Fern Cotton mixed up in my head. I think it's Fern Cotton, and I really like her, and I really like her Happy Place podcast. I would recommend it to anyone listening who, once you've listened to every podcast on this particular podcast, that, but not before. Anyway, so I committed and bought her mood monitoring journal. I was like, yeah, I'm going to be on it. I'm going to have a journal. But I didn't just buy her journal. I also bought another journal. I was like, I'm going to have all the journals. And I was filling out how much I'd drunk, and I was filling out her. And after about a week, I was just really, really stressed because I just added another thing to my to-do list.
It's another thing to fill out. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, so I don't do that anymore. I do a, if I feel in the mood, I might do this. It's demand avoidance managing, isn't it? It's like, I'm not going to place demand on myself, but it might be good if I do this.
Yeah, like if I'm in a good mood, I might as well write it down.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned earlier, like you had kind of like started up the kind of PurpleElla thing, and you were, you know, battling with having to be in a wheelchair and the fatigue and stuff like that. When did you start? Like, what year did you start your PurpleElla presence online? And did you start with YouTube?
So when my youngest, I've never talked about this actually, when my youngest daughter was born, I'd now had 3 children and been at home doing Play-Doh for 4 years. So I wanted to do something else. So I started a parenting blog. I was like, yeah, I could do a parenting blog. And that was really great. I did parenting. So this was in 2011, and I started the PurpleElla Autism content in 2016. So for quite a long time, I did parenting blogging in a fairly unsuccessful way. Like, I had people read my blog, but not that many. I did get a couple of free holidays. Well, not free because I had to work for them, but like it was that cliche thing that pictures of the kids, etc. And that was good. But then my kids started to get a bit older, and to be honest, I started to feel a little bit uncomfortable about talking about their stories on the internet. Like when they were tiny babies and I was breastfeeding and potty training, I'd never talked about potty training. That's a bad example. And when they were younger and I was breastfeeding and that stuff, it felt like my story, because when your children are that young, you almost aren't separate beings. And then that changed, and I didn't want to talk about that anymore. And I got the autism diagnosis, and I'd looked at YouTube. So I'd been to lots of parenting blogger conferences, and YouTube would come along and go, you should come onto YouTube. It's great. And I'd go, oh gosh, there's a big difference between opening my laptop and typing and setting up a camera and editing a video and putting it on YouTube. So I'd start. So if you look at my channel, it's been there since around then, because I got the name on YouTube because I wanted to know on YouTube, multiple people can have the same name, I think. Anyway, I had set up a channel and done nothing with it.
Okay.
And I was still feeling that way. So I was a bit intimidated. So I thought, I'm just going to get my iPad. And I set up my iPad on a stack of books in my living room, sat on the floor, recorded my first video, which is the first video that I made about my assessment and my diagnosis, in one take. So it required no editing. And stuck it up.
Excellent.
And then from there, I just kind of again, demand avoidance. Maybe I'll set up a camera. Maybe I'll start to have a look at iMovie and see if I can actually use it. Maybe I'll try and promote this stuff. I gradually started to get a bit more into it, but I was still at the time, literally on a Wednesday. I think Wednesday was my filming day. On a Wednesday, I would get up, I would decide what I was going to talk about, write a rough outline, sit in front of the camera, ramble. If you watch some of my earlier videos, I'll give 3 examples to make one point, which is not ideal. But I think some people kind of like that because it was very real. And got very frustrated because I didn't feel like I was growing in the way that I wanted to grow, because I wanted to help people, and to help people, you've got to get out there, haven't you? So I think I did that for 3 years, and gradually and slowly got up to 6,000 subscribers over the course of about 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the pandemic happened, and I found myself with a lot more free time and slightly older children who could fend for themselves. And I was like, right, okay, let's get back up. Let's script. Let's buy a decent camera. Let's get some lighting. And I really, really went for it.
Yeah.
And I just got to 23,000, I think.
Okay.
So in the course of 2 years.
Yeah, that's
6 to 20.
That's a lot of growth, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's been, and I started up the club and the Discord group and the extra things that I do now. And now I actually have a job, because all that time, in all that 4 years, I never made a penny from it. I didn't make anything.
Wow.
I never reached the YouTube 60 quid payment threshold.
I know that it's such a difficult thing to reach, isn't it? That payout stage.
Yeah. So I wasn't making anything at all, and I was putting in loads of time.
Yeah.
So, and now I don't know whether you're allowed to be happy, but now I do make a living from making online content, and I feel like I've fallen down this dream rabbit hole into my dream job, and I absolutely love it.
That's great. That's great to hear that you have reached a point where you can earn money, because it's like you say, it's all your time, it's all your effort, it's a lot of scripting, a lot of your, I imagine a lot of your brain power goes into making these, and you deserve to be able to financially get a reward from it.
It's a job, essentially.
Yeah.
It's a job that only exists because people are willing to support the fact that it's a job. And so I'm really, really grateful for the support that I've had, and also being able to call it a job. I think being able to call it a job, which I think I started being able to call it a job about a year ago. So it's yay. It's oh my goodness, I earned the same amount as minimum wage at that point, brilliant, that's a job. I can now officially call it a job, which meant that I could negotiate a full work day. So Mr. Purple now does a day of the house, and I have a day in the office. But it's given me the freedom to be more creative, I think, and just be B-roll footage. I know that. So B-roll footage, for anyone that doesn't know, is footage that you use that isn't you sat talking to camera. So you might be talking about something and you'll have a bit of B-roll footage of you doing it and put the voiceover over the top. And it just makes the video a bit interesting. And I was just like so intimidated by the idea of doing this. But now I'm like doing a bit of B-roll footage, doing different angles, doing silly things like dressing up like Maria and singing songs from The Sound of Music, you know, just having like a lot more creative fun. And ultimately, I come from a creative background. I was a dancer who ended up being a circus artist. And that's my background. And I feel like the early YouTube years of making no money, so not feeling like I could have that freedom, were very dry and didn't engage that side of myself. And so having YouTube and having TikTok as well, which is really open to being creative, has meant that I can combine the fact that I'm a performer and the things that I love with the knowledge that I've gained about autism and ADHD, and create this like perfect job that I would have. I can't imagine like 5 years, 10 years ago when I was going, you've got no job, you're weird, you're not coping, what's going on with you, to be where I am now. It just makes me so happy.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad that you feel like that as well, and that you are happy in what you're doing, and that you feel you can like put your own kind of spin on stuff and like be creative, because I think that's important. Like, you know, you've got to, like, with your own like online presence, you've got to be kind of, you know, show your own personality, and it's got to be like enjoyable for you. Otherwise, you know, it takes kind of the fun out of it, I guess.
Exactly.
So how do you manage all this like content creation if you've got like your TikTok going on and your YouTube going on? Like, do you find that like you can kind of make videos for yourself that like you're interested in, or do you find that you kind of, I don't know, have to like not like hop on trends as such, but like do you feel like you have to make certain videos to kind of gain views and stuff? Like, I'm always interested to understand the like way up between like.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and something that's actually been on my mind a lot lately. So to some extent you have to, you get kind of blocked into a niche, really. You have to have I felt that I became more successful post-parenting blogging once I had a very specific niche. So people are coming to me to hear about, at the time, autism. And obviously that's not all I'm about. And then the same thing happens on TikTok. If I put up a video that's about autism or ADHD, it's probably going to get a lot of views. If I put a thing up that's not that, or that's, you know, it's going to get a lot less views. And so I have recently been like, okay, how do I navigate making the content that is SEO friendly on YouTube, for example, and is going to help me keep this going as a job and keep the audience coming in, with the fact that I want to have fun. So I've kind of come up with and have the time to make it all to the standard I want to make it. So I've come up with a system whereby I completely ignore the rules about how much content creation I'm told I'm supposed to make. I'm told I'm supposed to make at least 1 video a week on YouTube and 3 a day on TikTok, I think is the current advice. Can you imagine?
What?
Yeah. So I go, no, I'm not doing that. And I've also prioritized certain channels, because I've got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And if I were to try and keep up with a steady stream of quality content for all of those channels, I would be mental by now. So I think, because video content is my thing, I focus on TikTok and YouTube, and then Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. If I think of something I want to put up, I'm going to put it up, but I'm not doing that on a schedule. No. And then I have a really clear schedule for both my main channels. So I aim to make 1 YouTube video a fortnight and 3 TikToks a week, which is completely against the advice. But I don't want to live in burnout for the sake of this. It would be an inauthentic. Can you imagine? Hey, everyone, we should all adjust our lives to suit our neurology, apart from me, and I'm going to run myself into the ground, and you can all watch me do that, and that'll be really inspiring. No, that's silly, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I do that, and then what I do is kind of 1 for me, 1 for them, if you like.
Okay, yeah.
So
nice.
On TikTok and YouTube, I make one that I'm like, this is going to be a searchable video that people are going to, you know, it's going to do well. It doesn't always, but mostly I'm right. And then this is something that will make me really happy to make. It's not going to do as well, but I can live with that kind of interspersed. And I think that's the way to go for me.
Yeah, that's good. At least that keeps it kind of a bit fresh in terms of like, you're not always having to do like specific autism. Like, you know, it could be something, I don't know, something that branches off that, but you don't.
I've been doing a bit of talking about my dog, my assistant's dog. I enjoy doing that.
That's nice. Like, it's nice to see like other aspects of your life and not just necessarily, you know, always focused on one thing, which I think is obviously, you know, I think people are genuinely online are quite nosy anyway, so they tend to want to know a bit about your life as well as, you know, like your diagnoses and things like that. So that's really good that you do like one for you, one for them kind of thing. It's a nice balance.
And Instagram, I try to think of Instagram because I'm not growing massively on Instagram, and I find Instagram really intimidating. So what my Instagram is entirely what I want to put up. It's just totally me, and I don't need it to be successful. So and to have a channel like that as well, to be like, hey, this is me, follow or don't, I don't mind.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice that you've got your own kind of space as well, just to post what you like when you like kind of thing. That's quite nice. I find that about Instagram as well. You can get into the, you know, a bit like TikTok, where it's like you should be posting really regularly, and actually you can't really have a life as well as doing that. Like, you've got to live a bit.
Yes, because you're quite successful on Instagram, aren't you? Is that your main channel, would you say?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think just because it's visual and I am an illustrator, that it works, but I can understand that, you know, for video, you know, content creation, that YouTube would be like the best place in terms of, so I think that's probably why Instagram works for me, potentially. But like you say, like I have Twitter, I have YouTube, I have TikTok as well, but they're kind of like, you know, kind of on the back burner a bit, where I'm like, oh, I should probably do something for that.
I think it's wise. I think it's really wise to focus in on the channel that is going to best suit your content.
Yeah, exactly. I think that, you know, that's where you're going to get the most, like, you know, eyeballs in terms of like people actually seeing your stuff and sharing it. So yeah, it's difficult. It's hard to like weigh up all the different platforms, isn't it? And you want to be seen to be like kind of everywhere, but actually that's a lot of effort.
I'm just rebelling against the whole thing. Having been a content creator for a really long time, I guess it must be over 10 years now, if you include parenting blogging, I just will not follow the rules. I'm going to do what I'm going to do now, because otherwise you can get so caught up in numbers and stressing and have I got enough followers, and am I doing, look, this person's doing all this, should I be doing all that too? Like, you know, someone who's like, for example, I really love Jessica Kelbrin-Fozard. Have you come across her?
No,
she's amazing. You should check her out. So she has an awesome YouTube channel, awesome TikTok, really cool, 3 or 4 really cool Instagram channels. Like there's one for her dog, there's one for her, there's one for her and her wife. And I would look at her and think, oh gosh, I guess she's kind of my someone I look up to, who I think does what they do really well, that I'm inspired by. And so I would just get so caught up in, and she's doing brilliantly, I've got to do brilliantly. And then I realised that I'm not her. And actually, I really genuinely think, and I think this is reflected with the fact that TikTok hasn't been as hard to grow. If you are doing you the way that works for you, I really think that's going to be more successful than just trying to fit into some rigid kind of rule bound how to do social media, ABC step-by-step plan, you know?
And I think, like you say, like comparison, it's definitely like the thief of joy in terms of like, you just think like, oh, I'm not doing that, or they're doing so much more, or they're churning out more things. But actually, you know, sometimes it's a team of people, not just one person. And I don't know, like you say, like people have like multiple channels and stuff, and it just feels like they're doing well. But actually, you've got to do what's right for you. And, you know, to risk burnout and stuff like that, it's not worth it, is it? You might as well just do what you enjoy doing and stop there.
I think you hit upon a really important point there that my husband did a lot of reminding me of. It's a team of people in some cases.
Yeah.
So you're seeing one person, you're not seeing the editor, you're not seeing the promoter, you're not seeing the manager, you're not seeing, you know, X, Y, Z. Whereas I actually now have a graphics person.
Ooh.
He's been doing that for about 8 months now, and prior to that I had no one. But like, yeah, one day I hope to have an editor, and I hope, you know, and then maybe I'll be able to produce more content. But yeah, I think because I think it's really important, because I think a lot of young content creators are coming online now and feeling all that pressure. I think focusing on the fact that you are just you, and most of these really big content creators have a team, is a really important thing to do.
Yeah. I've had emails like that where it's like, dear Emily and team, and I'm like, no, it's just me. It's just me.
I had a meeting, an exciting meeting, but I can't tell you more than that, the other day. And the person said to me, so you'll probably want to run this past your manager, won't you? And I was like, hey, Ella, do you think we should do this? Yeah, I think we should do this.
Just a like conversation between yourself.
Yeah, like I've got a manager. I mean,
I love that people have that impression of like, you know, people. It's like, no, it's just me.
It's me in my house.
Yeah,
with my pajamas on at the bottom half.
Yeah, exactly. You're not seeing everything. I'm glad you get that as well.
Yeah, I do.
And have you found, like, in the kind of like, I know you're like a public speaker as well. Have you found in the pandemic that's kind of gone down, or have you had more opportunity to like speak more at like virtual events and stuff? Like how have you found like not speaking in public as such? Like have you still had like events and stuff?
I mean, I love it because I get a lot of anxiety around travel. So that's always been something that's been tricky for me. So I really have enjoyed being able to do, yes, I've had some online speaking events that I've done during the pandemic. Not loads and loads, because actually I kind of consciously, I'm more interested in the content creation than I am in public speaking. Okay. Not because I don't enjoy public speaking, but because public speaking generally involves travel and I find that really hard. So I kind of consciously thought this is an opportunity for me to focus on the content creation and not be split two ways. So I took some, but not many. And moving forward, I think that's my plan, basically, that I'll mostly be at home. Is this me just saying I'd like to stay at home?
Yeah, please don't make me go out again.
Yeah, I'll mostly be at home doing what I do online. And there are some things, like I'd love to do VidCon. That would be really fun. There are some things that I'd love to go and speak at, but I'm not probably going to do as much. I used to do a lot of kind of going to individual schools and providers, and that's great and helpful. And I wish that I wasn't unwell and I could still keep doing that stuff. But I think what I'll keep my public speaking to the sort of, God, this sounds really arrogant, to the larger events, darling.
You've done it and you've tried it, and for you it's just too much in terms of, you know, spoons and stuff like that. I think that's totally valid to be like, actually you'd rather do something bigger and know that, you know, you might speak to more people in that way. And the fact that you've done school talks, you know, it's not like you're saying you've never done them.
And I think also the dream, like I have this little kind of private dream that I could develop some training packages, if you like, and then employ autistic people who are perhaps struggling to get employment and train them to go and deliver it.
That'd be cool.
So that I'm not leaving my house, which is, as we've established, the most important thing. And when I'm getting those requests, there's work for people that would benefit from having that work. Yeah. So that's it's not just my dream. So Roz, who you may have seen on some of my videos, who I work with sometimes, it's something that we would maybe do together. But It is totally a pipe dream. It's something we've talked about for years. But yeah,
it's a lovely idea, though. Like getting, you know, actually autistic people out and, you know, employing them, but also, you know, it gives you the ability to potentially train and also speak through people in some way. I think that's a really nice idea.
Yeah, thank you.
Especially like, you know, like employing people of different ages, because I think sometimes when like you're at school and someone in their like, you know, 50s or 60s come to speak, you're like, I don't really relate to them. Like, whereas if, you know, it might be an autistic person who's a teen or like young adult, you might be able to kind of relate to them a little bit more potentially. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I suppose the other thing about not doing as much of that work during the pandemic means I've been able to go on a few podcasts and like give up time in that way. And that's kind of fun too. That's been fun meeting new people and doing that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, that's nice. I think like it's really interesting to hear how like you've really like grown like your presence, but also just like speaking stuff in general. And I don't know, just to hear like a little bit about your life as well. It's really interesting.
I think it's really useful. My husband also runs a business. He runs an electrician business, and he's got 3 staff. It's proper business. And he's been working with a business coach and reading lots of business coach books. And whilst there's a part of me that just goes, oh no, that's all very corporate and capitalist, some of the principles are really useful. And I think that's what's been really handy for me, is being able to go, right, why do I do what I do? And what specifically, because prior to that, I was throwing a bit here, a bit there. Maybe I'll write a book. I'll do some public speaking. Maybe I'll do some consultancy. I'm going to make some online content stuff. I'm going to work in autism somewhere, you know, and being able to go, what do I actually want to do? What brings me joy? And how do I find a way to do that? Is really quite a good thing to do. And I think there's a video on, I think it's maybe a TED Talk on YouTube called Finding Your Why. or something like that. And it's a bit corporate and businessy, but I think it's if you're at that point, like you're self-employed and you're like, okay, so what direction do I want to go in? It's a really good thing to watch and then kind of take the principles into your life and figure out why you're doing what you're doing, because that tells you exactly then what you need to do moving forwards.
Yeah. And it's good to like also like reassess every so often, like, am I going in the right direction? Is this what I want? You know, am I doing like for me, I try and be like, am I doing the freelance stuff that I want to do? Or am I, you know, just saying yes and trying to people please? Like, it's difficult to get that balance of like, you know, stuff you enjoy, but also like you don't want to make your work kind of, you know, something you like dread doing, or like a to-do list where you're like, I really don't want to do this. So it is difficult to kind of, I don't know, weigh that up. But also interesting that you're kind of looking into like business stuff as well, in terms of like, you know, you can learn stuff from like other industries, and I love a good TED talk, so I might have to watch that one.
Try to look past the fact that you might feel like you should be a white man in a business suit whilst watching.
Right. Okay, I'll try that. I think we kind of chatted a little bit about the pandemic, but like how did you kind of manage throughout it? Did you prefer, like for me, I've preferred living and working from home, and it sounds like you have as well, in terms of not needing to travel and stuff like that. Do you find that you stopped kind of going out as much? Like, are you finding it hard to get back out into the world?
Well, I wasn't someone who went out a huge amount anyway because of my physical health condition. I think the thing that I found hardest was I have a really close friendship network who are part of what keeps Ella standing. So when I'm really struggling, these are the people that tell me that I'm enough, and, you know, let me sit in their houses and give me dinner when I'm just sat there like being very autistic and not coping well. And so not having that network, because we couldn't visit each other's houses, was really, really hard. So at the start of the first lockdown, I think we were all the same way, weren't we? Like, hey, we'll bake some banana bread and this is okay, this is fine. Yeah. As it's gone on and on, that's become increasingly difficult. But now that the restrictions are lifted in that way, and I can visit the handful of really close friends I've got, there isn't much more that I need from the world. I don't need to go shopping, and I definitely don't need to go to nightclubs, you know, all the things that maybe other people have missed. And that's not minimizing other people's experiences. I do really feel for people who need those things in their lives. Where was I going with this? I think, there is a good point. Let me get to it. I think prior to the pandemic, I was still people pleasing and going, right, I need to be someone who goes out and does something at the weekend and goes to the shops for fun. And, you know, a little bit of like structuring my life in the way that if you are neurotypical, the world tells you, doesn't it? You need to have so many friends, you need to leave the house so many times. Yeah. This is healthy living. And also because of my ADHD, I do get bored easily. So if I try and spend a day at home pre-pandemic, I'd be like, right, okay, what am I going to do? I'll do this. Right, okay, I should go out. I can't think of anything to do. And so I was also kind of struggling to occupy myself at home, but needing that rest and needing that downtime. And the pandemic has given me a space to learn how to, in a structured way, organise a chill day at home, which means that I now absolutely love being at home and want to go out a lot less. So it's changed me for the better, in that I think, and a lot of autistic people who also have ADHD might relate to this, I think it's hard to get the downtime you need as an autistic person when your ADHD brain is going, more stimulation.
Yeah.
So how to find that more stimulation in a restful way at home has been probably the best lesson I got from the pandemic.
Well, that's good. I'm glad like you found like some sort of like positive from it. And like you say, like, I guess for you, like having that ADHD in the mix as well, like you don't want to get bored and you don't want to, you know, overload yourself by like going out and stuff. Like it must be really like interesting to have the mix of autism and ADHD. Do you find that they kind of battle with each other or like clash together in terms of like what you want and need kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely. So my autism is like, okay, you've socialized with someone for an hour. I think it might be nice now for us to sort of sit in a slightly dark room and maybe chill out, because I can feel the adrenaline racing around your brain and you're all tingly, and I really think you need to bring that down a bit. And ADHD is like, no, let's phone another friend.
You're like, I don't know what's best for me.
Yeah, and ADHD pretty much always win one pre-ADHD medication.
Right.
So yeah, that's been really useful, and I'm now at the point where I can recognize the overload before it's gone too far and do something about it, which before it would be, not recognize the overload, keep going, have meltdown.
Yeah.
So that's been really useful. But I don't want to minimize at all that I've been really lucky. I haven't lost anyone close to me or been severely impacted by the pandemic in any way. And I know that's really privileged. And I know that lots of people have had a really hard time financially and losing loved ones. And I don't want to be like, hey, the pandemic's been great without saying that, really.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry for the people, and I do feel really privileged and really sorry for the people that have had a harder pandemic than me.
Yeah. I feel like the exact same way, being like, I kept my job, I could work from home, and you feel like almost bad to be like, oh, I really love working from home, when some people just, can't do that or don't have the space or, the dynamic of family and friends living together and stuff like that. So I definitely get that it's important to say, like, we're obviously quite privileged to have managed okay and not lost anyone and stuff like that. So yeah, you're definitely right. It's worth mentioning. Yeah, definitely. And I really want to ask you as well, you mentioned Coco a little bit earlier about doing some videos. So can you explain to people, what does Coco help you with?
I would love nothing more than to obsess about my assistance dog. You got several hours. I got Coco 3.5 years ago now as a 12-week-old puppy. Through a breeder. I was on a wait list for a year. I wanted a Cavachon specifically because I'd done loads of research because I've got limited energy, so I couldn't have had a dog that I could walk really far, that I needed to walk often or really far. And my husband's not that keen on dogs, so it had to be a dog that would be fairly intrusive. I didn't want it to so I came to Cavachon and joined some Facebook group and found a breeder and got this puppy, and had said to the breeder at the time, I'm autistic and I'd definitely like her to be sort of part of my therapy, really. So she was great, and we're still in touch now, and really watched those puppies during the time that she had them to identify the dog she thought was going to be best suited to that kind of work. But I didn't imagine that I was going to be able to have an actual service dog that I could take around with me, because I thought that you had to go through a charity, and all the charities that I checked out basically said no kids over the age of 12, and I was at this time 40. So I thought it just wasn't something that I could have, and I'd done a lot of research. I really felt like I would benefit from that, but I'd concluded that a pet dog that supported me at home would be definitely better than no dog. So I got Coco, and she proved to be, just amazing, just so good for me, just everything. I'd always wanted a dog, and it's one of the few things I've ever done where it was exactly as brilliant and wonderful as I had anticipated it being. And that's not to say that would be the same for everyone, but for me, I don't find the dog care, every bit of it, apart from maybe picking up her poo, is super fun and lovely and great. But during that time, if I ever had to go to a hospital appointment or to the shops or to anything really, Mr. Purple would have to take time off work and come with me, because I would get so anxious and I would have panic attacks and I would become unwell, and I needed physical support as well. And so that was not ideal. And then I came across someone that I know that is an autism advocate was talking about the organisation that I use, Pausable, being an owner train, where you could train, if your dog was suitable, you could train your dog to pass the public access test, and you pay them a monthly fee, so they're insured in the way that any other assistance dog would be, and there's a standard of training they have to reach to pass this test. And so you could essentially, if you have the right dog, they could become your service dog. And I was so excited. Immediately emailed them, was like, me please. Definitely. But they have to pass this initial, like, are they suitable? Because if the dog's really reactive or anxious or anything like that, they're just not going to be able to do the kind of work that's needed. Because if you've got a service dog, you're going into a hospital or a cinema or wherever, really, they've got to be to a certain standard of behaviour, or it ruins the whole of assistance dogs for everyone, because no one trusts the standard, So I took that. So she passed the initial assessment that she was suitable, and I took that training really seriously, almost too seriously. I think I thought I was training her to like guide dog for the blind standard.
Such a high.
Like she's got to be absolutely, perhaps not even really a dog, absolutely impeccable. And I've since chilled out a bit and gone, she's fine. She's not a specially selected guide dog puppy that's been, Anyway, she passed her public access in December, so she's now a fully qualified assistance dog. And I now go to hospital appointments and shops on my own, because when I'm with her, it's infinitely more manageable. And in addition, she's been trained to do specific tasks. So she's been trained to interrupt me if I start to show the early signs of a meltdown. She's been trained to interrupt me so that I get a pause point to go, oh, I should take myself off and calm down, you know.
Okay.
She's been trained to lead me out of busy places if I get overwhelmed, and she's been trained to provide deep pressure therapy. How deep, I don't know, because she's kind of a small dog, but I'm kind of a small person, so it works. And she has her little jacket, and it's just, it's of all the support needs that I've had, she's filled the most. And I now just feel as someone who's been through trying to get care assessments, maybe I can get a PA to go to hospital appointments with me. How do I get my support needs met when the world, the council, is looking at me going, "You're a mum of 3, you're absolutely fine."
Yeah.
How do I get those needs met? And so getting Coco feels like so empowering that I found a way to get my needs met through work of my own, training my dog, that has been really effective. And she's also absolutely adorable, as I'm sure you may have seen. She is just the cutest little thing. And I love working with her, and I will always hope to have an assistance dog moving forwards.
Oh, she sounds amazing. And just to have like a little partner in crime to like, you know, go to the hospital with, or just to know that you've got just something by your side that's gonna, I can totally understand how she's a reassurance and like a constant companion. And I think dogs do that so well. They're just, you know, there for you no matter what kind of thing. And that's so lovely to hear, of like all the amazing, like, you know, training that you were so like passionate about getting through, but also that she's trained to do so many, you know, specific things that will help you as well. Like, you know, even just like having like deep pressure must be great, like in terms of having like a little weighted blanket in a kind of cozy dog form.
Prior to getting her to doing this, I had this like kind of misguided belief that the only dogs capable of training to be assistance dogs were Labradors, Golden Retrievers, maybe Spaniels, because Spaniels are pretty smart, maybe Poodles. Poodles are also incredibly smart. But my dog was probably a bit stupid, you know. But actually, she's really, really food-led, which has really helped with training her to do the task. Right. And, you know, she's not Labrador smart, but she's certainly smart enough to have picked up the stuff that I've tried to teach her. And I also I have to train her every single day. I have to do a training session with her to keep her in practice. Okay. And the other thing that's happened that's exciting since then is, so Pausable are the sister organisation, and Pausable aren't the only organisation that do this. There are other organisations, especially for specific conditions, if you have a look around, but they are the sister organisation of Dogs for Autism. So Dogs for Autism also noticed that you can't get an autism assistance dog unless you're under the age of 12, and wanted to fill that gap. And so they provide fully trained, they're a charity that provide fully trained assistance dogs to autistic people of all ages, which just doesn't happen. Yeah. So I'm really passionate about what they do and have been keen to support them to do that. And they just recently made me an ambassador of the charity. So that's really great, because they basically, I think, want to be to the autism world what guide dogs are, you know, for the blind. So, so I if anybody feels like supporting a charity, I would strongly suggest that one, because I think the idea that someone my age could go to this charity and get an assistance dog, as well as a 7-year-old, is an acknowledgement, A, that autism doesn't suddenly get better when you're 12. Yeah. B, that you still have support. But it's sort of acknowledging our existence, really, even in its own way, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And is this a UK charity?
Yeah, and this is a UK charity. I think they're about 5 years old. They just recently got, so, you know, if you want to have official assistance dogs, you have to be in this particular collection. There's a particular, organisation that certain charities are in, and if it's that kind of dog, then it's recognised, you know, internationally. And I think they just recently got the accreditation for that as well. Okay. And the way that they work is that they gradually build a relationship between the autistic person and the dog. So the dog lives with a trainer, and so you might do an afternoon with your dog, and then you might do a weekend, you know, and it's an individualised, personalised plan that they make depending on that person's needs and the dog's needs. And they don't just use Labradors. So if you're an autistic person that needs a smaller dog, they also work with smaller dogs. So I think they're brilliant, and I'm really sorry to have gone on about them, but I'm really keen to support what they do.
I'm definitely a dog person as well, so don't worry, I talk about dogs all day.
Have you got a dog?
Yeah, I have a beagle who is...
Beagle. I'm just going to quickly Google what beagles look. I'm a bit upset. Do you have a special interest of I need to identify all of the dogs?
All breeds,
all the time? Yeah, me too.
Once you see what one looks like, you'll like recognise.
Oh, yeah. Well, isn't there a film that beagles are in?
A film that beagles ring. Do you know what? There's a couple I can think of already, like children's ones, and
they're adorable. And why is your
very
here now?
Very food led. Very fit, like anything. It's just like a bin for food, basically.
Which is great. Yeah, Coco's exactly the same. It's really like, we've actually wondered if we tipped, because we buy her food in massive sacks because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
If we tipped a whole sack out, when would she stop? You ever thought, would they stop?
Yeah.
Or would she?
Yeah. Exactly.
But the good thing about food-led dogs is it's easy to train them.
Yeah, and he's very responsive to his name off the lead, which is great because if you have food, he'll just come straight back. So luckily, he's quite good. But yeah, he's great. He sheds a lot of hair, so would not recommend in terms of sensory aspect because there's just hair everywhere. But as a companion, he's lovely.
How old is he?
He's getting on a bit now. He's 14. So I think I got him when I was 12. And I'm now 27, so I've had him quite a long time.
Gosh,
yeah. So he's getting a little bit old and lumpy at the moment because I think they just get like that, dogs. They just get a bit like, I don't know, like a bit lumpy and old, and bless him. But yeah, he's great. It's just nice. I love dogs. I'm really not like a cat person. I know some people are like obsessed with cats, but I'm just like, no, dogs all the way.
Yeah, I mean, I like cats. I've got a cat. I do like cats. I will always have a cat, but dogs, yeah. I mean, I just don't understand why anyone wouldn't. I mean, I do, because I'm glad that people are responsible and don't take on dogs when they're not prepared for work. But at the same time, I'm like, why is it that you live without a dog?
Yeah. It can really benefit you.
No, they're the best, aren't they?
Yeah, they really are, definitely. I can't believe we've been talking for an hour already. Wow, it's gone so quick. I was going to say to you, like, towards the end, like, obviously I want you to mention social media handles and stuff like that, but do you want to just mention about the, like, Purple People community and what that's kind of about, if people might be interested in joining?
Yeah, so I have a community that is run from YouTube, so you can join it by clicking the join button on my YouTube channel. And basically, the money from that community that I get from that community, YouTube take a bunch of it, but what's left, I use to buy equipment and pay myself for the hours that I'm working, and it's part of how I support myself. And in exchange, I make a monthly video that is exclusively for the Purple People, and sometimes it'll be a continuation of something I've talked about but I want to go more in depth, or sometimes it'll just be a little bit of my life. So I do that. But the really lovely thing about this community is that we have a Discord group, and I can genuinely say I feel like I've been really lucky. The people who are in this community are the most supportive group of people. They're so lovely, and there's always comments about, can really be myself here. I really feel like I've been able to be open, and it's they're just lovely. I feel like where are the mean people? They didn't join my club.
Yeah, luckily.
They're a lovely bunch, and so I guess they know me a little bit better because I'm also in the Discord. And they always come to the live show. I do a monthly live stream. I also am going to start doing an extra one a month on TikTok as well, like one on YouTube, one on TikTok. So they always come to the live streams and chat amongst each, like they're all kind of becoming friends with each other, and it's just the most lovely thing, and I'm so proud that I've built this little community. So yeah, if you fancy being part of that, click the join button on my channel. And my other stuff that I should mention is, so yeah, I've got TikTok. On TikTok, I'm at PurpleElla and Coco, mainly because PurpleElla was already gone. And I'm the same on Instagram, PurpleElla and Coco, PurpleElla on YouTube, and all the other handles. And it would be great if you check me out there. And finally, I do also sell like cool hoodies and t-shirts. Yeah, I collaborate with a company called Born Anxious, who are absolutely, well, it's one lady. I'm making it sound like she's got this massive team. She has a team, but it's not like, Marks and Spencer's. So she's doing this really, she has an autistic son, and she does this to raise awareness and support autistic creators like me. They're all organic cotton. They are sensory friendly, label free, and not insane YouTuber prices. So the hoodies aren't 50 quid, for example.
Great.
They're reasonably priced.
Good.
And they have positive slogans. So the one that I've got out says, "We've got this for any moment that you're like, I'm not sure if I've, no, it's fine."
Oh, wait.
And I've got a new design coming out, hopefully in the next month. So if you go to Born Anxious, and in addition, she's got lots of collabs with lots of different creators, and it's just lovely stuff.
Okay. Oh, I'll have to check that out. I'm intrigued to see what your latest one's going to be as well.
Yeah, well, I drew it. It's something I did draw with my very own hands. And we were talking earlier, weren't we, about how I love art, but I'm not generally that good at it. So, yeah, I'm quite like, is it okay? Because do you use Procreate?
Yes, yeah.
So I use Procreate. It's just the best, isn't it? So it's something that I did on Procreate.
Oh, I'm going to keep an eye out for that. I'm really intrigued to see what that looks like. Oh, cool. Well, I'll make sure to put all the links that you mentioned in the show notes so people can just click them. And yeah, I think that was everything I wanted to chat about. Thank you so much for giving up some of your time to chat to me. It's been really interesting to get to know you a bit more and hear all about your life and your work. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for having me. I hope I haven't rambled or gone on too many times. This is what happens when I'm unscripted. But yeah, it's been great to be here.